X-Men United, $1 million cross day one. More specifically, $1.2 million. Day one's not over yet, although it's bordering it, because there's about 25 minutes to go on day one. Let's call it an even $1.2 million for Marvel United day one. Now, that might not seem like a lot of money, especially if you're comparing it to, I don't know, whatever Kamon's last Wild West, Undead or Alive, whatever it was, Zombicide. Some games, especially in the miniature universe, do tend to cross very high numbers, but especially when you compare it to day one of Marvel United back in the day. Do you know how many days it took for the original Marvel United to cross $1 million? It took 8 days for it to cross $1 million. 8 full days to hit that line. Marvel United, the original game, was not the smashing success that well, this one seems to be. Now, before we get into all of that, this is actually a fairly, I don't know what you want to call it, nostalgic video for me. You see, my first video, or one of my first videos that did well in the board game space, was going to be when I originally covered Marvel United. I covered it way back, Marvel United, why I'm backing it, way back in February something or other. Let's see, February 13th, I covered it, just talking about the game, why I backed the game. I just started doing YouTube videos 2 or 3 months earlier, and I hadn't really delved into this whole Kickstarter space just yet. And I put out this video just talking about my personal excitement about Marvel United, because I was excited for it. And then this whole game that we had heard so much about launched, and it seemed to be lighter than what we were all looking forward to. Chibis, Marvel, come on, all those things combined, we were all excited, and then we were a little bit let down when we saw this card row of cards laid out, and I decided to talk about why, despite my disappointment, I was backing it anyway. And so, here I am, sitting in a hotel room in Argentina, yes, in Argentina, holding up a rulebook for Marvel Champions because I wanted something to show, and I didn't do any of the stuff that I did nowadays, like switching screens, giant setups, lighting, all those, whatever, all that stuff. I had nothing. I literally just sitting in a hotel room talking about why I'm backing this game despite being a little let down, and it's a video that did fairly well for me back then. It's a video that crossed several thousand views within a few days, and that was absolutely huge. My videos at the time were, again, I was new, and I was getting like 150 views on a video and calling that a success, and then I got like 3,000 views on this one, and so this has a degree of nostalgia for me. This has a degree of the original video for me on this channel that almost defined what it is that I do. And so before I get into the game, before I talk about X-Men United, what's the backing it, what's different, all the stuff that I usually do, thank you. Just thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of this journey the past year. Whether you're someone who this is your first video, in which case apologies for the seemingly random thing out of the blue, and whether you're someone who's been following me for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year or more, thank you. Genuinely, I am having so much fun doing what I'm doing, and the ability to sit in front of a camera and just talk about something that I care so much about, a space, a hobby space that I love, that I enjoy, and to just be able to do this, it's something I'm very grateful for. And so thank you to every single one of you. Thank you to Kamon for putting out a game that was lackluster in its initial appeal, that triggered me to put out that video, that defined the space and the direction that I have taken this channel in the past year. And that's it, really. And so, Marvel United, or more specifically, X-Men United. Back to that whole $1 million thing. So it's $1.2 million day one. The original took, 8 days to cross $1 million. More specifically, it looks like it around 9 or 10 days to cross $1.2 million. But finally ending, it did have a strong end towards the end. $2.86 million total at the end of the day. And I think this one's probably primed to cross 3 easily, more likely to hit 4 million. You see, all the hesitancy that people had around the initial Marvel United, all that hesitancy is still there, but we also know that coming out of the other side, yes, it is a lighter game, there is no bones about that, but we also know that it's a good lighter game. It's a lighter game that people are enjoying. It's a lighter game that is easier to pull off the shelf and just get to the table, and it's rewarding in what it's doing, and the variability, not necessarily of the heroes, although each person will feel differently with that, but the variability of the game between the different modes, between the expansions, between the villains you are facing. This is a fun system, one that I genuinely recommend as a game that almost everyone should pick up and try. If people are saying this is the game that got them into the hobby, that will be amazing. I think this will genuinely open up the hobby to many people, and of course, it's Marvel. And that success is doubly so important because at the end of the day, this is Marvel United with X-Men. Let's scroll through this. And so we're going to have the initial, I'll come back to different parts of the page over here, but Just starting off the bat, we have the initial X-Men we all know. We have Wolverine, we have Storm, we have Beast, we have Cyclops, we have, I guess that's Jean Grey, I think. We have Professor X, and then we have Juggernaut, and what's his name, who I can't remember his name, but I know him, Sabretooth, and then Mystique, and of course Magento. And that's going to be your core X-Men, and everyone knows them. And then we have Pyro and Blob and Toad, and I think most people know them. They're from the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. They were featured in a movie once, I believe, and they're also in the comics, of course. But then as we get further down the page, depending on, let's go through the stretch goals. So if we scroll to the stretch goals, let's see if we can find them over there. Stretch goals down somewhere here. We have the Apocalypse. We'll come back to that as well. But if you scroll to the stretch goals, where we're going to start to see a bit of a gap in who knows what. And when I say gap, I mean gap. There'll be many of you who know every single one of these that I'm showing you. You know Feral, do you know Polaris, do you know the Shadow King, do you know Strong Guy, do you know Boom Boom, which I feel ridiculous even saying Boom Boom, but do you know Boom Boom, do you know Callisto, Longshot, Dazzler, Deathbird? I mean, the miniatures for all of these look amazing. Do you know Sunspot, Magic, Arcade, Firestar, and look at that. We'll talk about that little thing over there that's going on with that plastic around her hands. Do you know Legion? By the way, the Legion TV show, completely different from any other superhero property out there, more akin to the Joker and what it's doing with like this balance of mental health and powers and all that, but amazing TV show. I need to get caught up because I'm still on season 1, but that was a great season 1. We have Legion's villain components, which breaking up of things like that I always find intriguing. We have Warpath, we have Lady Deathstrike. How many of those characters do you know? Because there's going to be many of you who know every single one of those, and many of you who are judging me for not knowing every single one of those. I know some, not all. But then there's going to be just as many who don't know them all, because at the end of the day, there are people who know comics well, who are into the universes, the properties, who've read through them, and have engaged with them, and are excited to see all these characters. And then there's going to be just as many who are introduced to superhero movies, and these characters haven't been in superhero movies. Marvel United had the benefit of having a incredibly strong movie franchise, possibly the strongest movie franchise we have ever seen in the existence of cinema ever. And it had that strength driving forward the property as well. And X-Men United, don't get me wrong, people love X-Men, but X-Men United doesn't have that same brand recognition, that same name recognition. You're expecting and relying on people to sign up for tons and tons of these miniatures, of which many people won't even know these particular characters. At least not compared to Marvel. And so that strength, that 1.2 million, is doubly more impressive when you factor that into the equation. The fact that it's still doing so well, despite arguably being a weaker property. And I say arguably because, again, I recognize that there are different people who have different degrees of affinity to each of these things. And so as far as the differences, what is X-Men United doing different than Marvel United? Because at the end of the day, we're going to be talking about this in the whole Should You Back It, but it just, both from a monetary perspective as well as a personal collections perspective, do you really need another 60, 70, 80 different miniatures to mix up your Marvel United experience if you already have Marvel United? And so I think it's important to know what these games do differently. What does X-Men United do differently that Marvel United does not? And to begin with, let's talk about these mixed characters. Those purple characters over there, those are characters that can be both villains and heroes. Akin to both, I think akin to Venom is the one that they did it in the original Marvel United, but they had two different sculpts for it or whatever it was. But in this game, in X-Men United, they're giving you purple characters that can play both as a hero and as a villain. Their allegiances are mixed, and to that extent, the game thematically wants you to experience that mixed allegiance. Now, I don't know exactly how it plays if you're having 2 or 3 purple characters in a game. Do you just try to remember who's who? It can't be that hard. There is a dashboard. But nonetheless, purple characters are going to be both of that. Now, next up, it's a 5-player game now. Whereas Marvel United is a 4-player game, X-Men United brings a 5th player in. And in addition to that change, it's also making it a 1 versus many game at the same time. It's not merely that they decided to shoehorn a 5th hero into your already crowded game. Rather, they said, why don't we build the system and tweak the system just a tad so that a single player can fight against the heroes and you can have that 1 versus many gameplay, and it will be the shortest, most accessible 1 versus many game that I've ever seen, because I love the concept of 1 versus many systems. Practically speaking, most of the time that I've seen them done, though, most of the time that I've seen a 1 versus many executed, it ends up being much longer than I would like it to be. Not always, but that usually is my biggest critique around those games. X-Men United is going to allow you to experience a 1 versus many game in a 30-minute playtime, which is amazing. I mean, hopefully it's fun too, but this is going to be most akin to if you've been playing in the Loki genre of the game, the Loki genre with a Betrayer, where you did experience that aspect of one person fighting against everyone else, but with a hidden traitor mechanism. In this game, you don't necessarily need that hidden traitor mechanism. You can just have a 1 versus many straight head-to-head gameplay of one person playing as Magneto or whoever, taking on the X-Men. which is another fun way to do it. Additionally, it's going to be focusing heavier on differentiating those heroes. If we can see a little thing over here, somewhere over here, mutant heroes. Each hero now has at least 4 special cards, special effects in the decks, usually with 2 types or more. Some key effects are always in your starting hand. And so while Marvel has, to a certain extent, doubled down, they have a, designer diary and whatnot, they doubled down the idea that the original system had tons of unique heroes that felt so drastically different. And it's worth noting that Tom Vassell, Dice Tower, he mentioned in his reviews when he was covering these that while he shared the general opinion at first that they weren't that different, the more he played the game, the more he does feel that different characters do have their own feel. So perhaps the more you play the game, the more those differences will stand out. Speaking for myself, where I have maybe a dozen games of Marvel United under my belt, I don't feel that most of the heroes feel that difference. Sure, they each have a small, unique spin to them, especially with their hero cards that will differentiate them a bit, but for the most part, I don't feel like I really need to play one hero versus the next. Throw me any hero and I'll jump in and play it. I usually pick my heroes based on the thematic connection to that hero, rather than actually caring about I need a deck that's strong in this or that or anything else. So I'm happy to see that they are further differentiating those heroes, both with more special ability cards, as well as the fact that, you'll have starting abilities in your hand that, if you're playing a game as character X and you need to draw a certain card to really drive home the feeling of that character, well, you're guaranteed to get it, as opposed to playing through an entire game where you may never see that card. At the end of the day, keep in mind, Marvel United is a system that relies on 3 symbols. 3 symbols, 4 if you count a wild. There's only so many possible configurations you can have of those symbols, so it really is the text-based abilities that will make characters feel different, and so Marvel or X-Men United is doubling down and adding to those differences so that we have more to make them feel different. Additionally, speaking of doubling down, they're taking I don't know where it says it over here, but they had somewhere over here, but they're doubling down, not doubling, they're adding to the variety of effects that locations have. Whereas the original locations in the game, there's only so many combinations you can have when you can draw a card or move a thing or do or whatever, and they're going to be adding more nuance and more depth to many of the locations. They're still going to have a lot of the basics because they have to cover the bases, but they will have more variety and depth to them. Past that, some things, if you're playing against the 1 versus many mode, you're going to have surprises that the villain can throw at the heroes, and the reverse is true as well. You'll have cards the heroes can play back against the villains. There's also going to be a fun little thing about like delay and acceleration tokens. I don't know where they can find the tokens, but either way, I don't know where the tokens are. They're somewhere here, but somewhere in this pile of tokens over here are the concept of delay and acceleration tokens, which are tokens that will either have the villain playing their card earlier than planned in the timeline, or alternatively playing their card later than planned. Either way, adding another effect to the game. And that, I think, is going to be the core differences of Marvel United, at least what we know so far. As far as the Horsemen of the Apocalypse is going to be the thing most akin to, let me see if I can find it over here, the Horsemen of the Apocalypse is going to be the thing most akin to Thanos' Infinity War in the last game. You're going to have the Horsemen of the Apocalypse with Apocalypse himself as well as his 4 horsemen, and it's going to both allow you to play against Apocalypse directly, the same way you can play against Thanos directly, or alternatively fighting against Apocalypse in a series of battles where you fight against the horsemen, and every horseman you defeat will give you a bit of an edge, and every horseman that survives or whatnot will give them an edge against you. So the same idea of a drawn out sequence of battles that ends up in a final fight where you have either an edge or less of an edge depending on how things went past that. And as far as the pledge levels, let's talk about the pledge levels over here, because I guess that's what we're up to now. So pledge levels, we're going to have $65 for the Mutant Pledge. That's going to give you the core game itself, as well as all the stretch goals that develop. And of course, keep in mind, if this is anything like the original Marvel United, you can expect a good 50, 60 heroes thrown into your box, not for free, but for the additional $65 that you are paying. Keep in mind, $65 plus the shipping, you're looking at around $80 for that pledge, compared to picking up at Walmart down the road for $25, $30. So you're easily paying $50 more for that box of extra heroes. So is it worth $50 for you for a box full of chibi miniature heroes that around 50 of them at around a buck a piece or so? I mean, it is to me, but that's going to be a personal decision to some degree. And then next up, we have the Apocalypse Pledge for $100. An additional $35 on top of that, you get the Apocalypse Pledge, which gives you the Kickstarter exclusive Apocalypse game, as well as the specific hero that comes with it, which I believe is over here, the unique version of Storm. Now keep in mind, Storm is in the base game. This is an alternate sculpt with alternate ability deck, so it's going to be a different, but if you want Storm, don't worry, you're still getting Storm. This is actually kind of nice of Command. Nice is a relative word. Maybe I've grown to expect less, but it's almost nice that they're not like, paywalling an essential character behind a Kickstarter exclusive, although, again, still a version of Storm or whatnot. And that's going to be the main everything we have till now. Going back to the stretch goals, let's take a look at the stretch goals, and we'll cover the what you can back already from the originals and the should you back it or not. But over here, like I said, we have Feral, we have Polaris, we have Shadow King, just more villains, henchmen, Strong Guy, Boom Boom, again, I feel ridiculous saying Boom Boom, Callisto, Longshot, Dazzler, Deathbird. The sculpt on this is amazing. I'm loving that sculpt. We have Sunspot, we have Magic, we have Arcade, we have Firestar. Now, Firestar is going to be the second of two sculpts that, so far, I think the other one was in the Brotherhood of Mutants, where you see some sort of extra plastic thing going on in the sculpt. Marvel, or more specifically, come on, Cool Mini or Not, is experimenting with new stuff. I mean, similar to what they did in Scooby-Doo or whatnot, where they had pre-painted miniatures, this is another new iteration, something that is interesting. Now, there'll be people who won't necessarily like this. There'll be people who say, well, if I'm going to have an unpainted miniature, then having fire out of my unpainted miniature just feels weird, and I get that. For myself, I still like it. I still think it's an improvement, and it might just be an incentive for me to actually finally paint it as well. But either way, I'm just excited for the innovation that comes along with it. That plastic extra thrown onto your miniature, this is something that I think we just saw recently with ISS Vanguard and Awakened Realms, throwing plastic pieces as an extra onto their plastic miniatures. It was an interesting tie-in, but I'm constantly interested in innovation in this space, because gray plastic is exciting to a degree, but I'd rather paint them, but I don't have time to paint them, and so anything you can do to make my miniatures cooler or more interesting, I am all for those innovations in the space. Granted, we'll be paying for those innovations, but I'm all for those. Then we have Legion, Warpath, Lady Deathstrike, and that's everything we have so far. But keep in mind, this is literally day one of the campaign. We're going to have stretch goals develop across the rest of the campaign, absolutely. I have not seen anything about daily unlocks. Keep that in mind as well. So I have not seen any information whatsoever about daily unlocks, which is CMON's usual game these days. But keep in mind they're doing it together with Spin Master, which means they might be following a different trend here. It may be stretch goals only, but even so, stretch goals only at what are we looking at? We're looking at a 100k gap between stretch goals, likely crossing 3 to 4 million on this. We're looking at another 30 to 40 heroes almost certainly in this campaign, although it could vary, almost for sure it could vary, but that's what I would say what we're looking at here. Some other things to know before we cover the should you back it: there is going to be two-wave shipping over here, so you're going to be paying, if you want that core box, then you can pay a little bit of extra to get it now, or you could do what I'm probably going to do, which I'll probably bake it up into one-wave shipping and pay the extra 10, 15 bucks or whatever it is, and just buy the copy for 25 bucks when it shows up on Amazon, Walmart, or whatever, and that way I can gift or sell the original base set down the road, because otherwise you're just paying half as much anyway for the extra difference in shipping. So I'll make my mind later on that one, but I'm probably going to just end up getting 2 core boxes and then gifting or selling the other one down the road. Other than that, you can't get the Marvel extras. When the Marvel United extras are available in this campaign, but you cannot get them without getting a base pledge of X-Men United. Now this is a good part to tangent into should you back it, should you back it or not, will it hold its value, all of that, because at the end of the day, this game absolutely will hold its value. Marvel United, if you look at the original Kickstarter, and there is room for discussion here, because on the one hand, this is one of those CMON games where they have tons of extras and it should theoretically hold its value. On the other hand, it is a lighter game. But if you look at the sold market on Marvel United, if you look at the sales on Marvel United for the original Kickstarter, it is selling for well above what people pledged for it. There were people's $200 pledges and all in plus shipping and whatnot. They're selling for anywhere between $250 to $400 on the aftermarket. This is a game that people still want all those deluxe extras. Now that price likely will go down because you can get most of those exclusives in this Kickstarter. But as far as the general idea of that popularity, the general idea of people being willing to pay to get their hands on this chibi goodness, for those of you who consider it chibi goodness and not chibi evil, well, that demand is clearly there. And I think that's going to hold true for Marvel X-Men United as well. I see no reason why it'd be different. I think this game absolutely will hold its value. In terms of if you're backing it for yourself, then great. More miniatures, more not. Now, whether or not you need it is a different conversation. Do you actually need to spend another $200 by the time all is said and done in this campaign, because it will be somewhere in that range? Do you need to spend another $200 to get more chibis and extras and whatnot to mix up your Marvel United experience? You absolutely don't need to. Do you want to? I mean, speaking for myself, I will be, but that's because when I like a game, I tend to go all in, and my kids already enjoy this game. This is a game that I have been playing with my 6-year-old. My 6-year-old who generally only likes a handful of games, and he's been having a blast with me, playing his cards, running around the table, defeating the villain. It is fun. And I've been having just as much fun playing it with adults at the same time. It is fun, it is accessible, it has a wide array of the types of people and the types of experiences it can give you and who you can have fun with. And so yeah, I'll shell out for more of this stuff. I'll shell out for more of the content. Even if it's just to make the heroes feel more unique or different or whatever, I like it. I like the chibis. I like all the stuff involved. So whether you're backing it on a personal level, that is a decision you have to make for yourself. If you're backing it and you're uncertain whether this is the right time to get it, it will hold its value. If this is a game that is not the right fit for you, both the original core box as well as the new stuff, the Marvel United X-Men, all of those things will hold its value. If you're backing it just for the original stuff and you just want the Ultimate Classic bundle or any of the expansions, you just want to pay for that, and you're upset about the fact that you have to buy a Marvel United X-Men set along with it, well then just buy that Marvel United X-Men set and sell it for more than you paid for it down the road. You will be able to do that as well. Don't sit there wasting time in the comments complaining that you can't do it. You'll be fine. You'll be able to get your $65 back and then some if you choose to go that route. Now do keep in mind, by the way, that all of these extras over here, these expansions, all of that, they are more expensive than they were in the original Kickstarter. This $220 bundle was $190 and included the base game in the original Kickstarter. All of these individual, the boards were $20 in the original, it's $25 here. Sinister Six was $35 in the original, it's $45 here. All of these, Infinity Gauntlet was $35, I believe, and it's $40 over here. We have the rest of the expansions were $30 now and $25 in the original. All of the expansions are a little bit more here than they were in the original Kickstarter. That said, they should still hold their value. The gap between what people paid versus what the market is worth right now, don't buy these as a investment. There are better ways to make money. But if you want to dive all in on this and you're concerned that it may not be a game for you down the road, well, you'll be able to get your money back quite easily. And that's it. That's going to be Marvel United. I may or may not have a full video covering this by the end of the campaign. Depends how much they add, depends how much what they do or not. At the very least, I will be covering it every single Monday in my Monday roundups. If you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to see me cover any and all of the Kickstarters, then I talk about them every single Monday, as well as the occasional Should You Back It and everything else that I usually cover on this channel. Until next time, my throat. Until next time, I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.